Our next session is titled The Great Northern, Building an Empire on Blackfeet History. I'd like to introduce our chair for today, James Toledo. Thanks.
Thank you, Alessandra. Good morning, everyone, and good morning to those joining us virtually. It is my honor to introduce our next presenters. We have Drew Landry, who is an extension agent for the USDA, and he also works with Blackfeet Community College. And we also have Cecilia Wells, who is a photography instructor with Blackfeet Community College. And now I'll turn the time over to Drew and Cecilia so they can introduce themselves. Thank you.
What are you doing today? I guess we'll start over. How's everybody doing this morning, this afternoon? I guess it's more of a morning. So my name's Drew Landry. I moved up to the Blackfeet Nation, I guess 7 years ago, and I started taking language classes at the community college. And now our daughter's an enrolled member of the tribe, and we've helped in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, I think our community has helped us. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the work that we both do at Blackfeet Community College, but also I think with our specific case, when you talk about the Great Northern, you also have to talk about the relationship between the Blackfeet tribe and Glacier National Park. And so because Great Northern was a concessionaire until World War II, they largely were in business with the national park there. And while many Blackfeet members were able to grace the covers of the Great Northern calendar, not many of them got to reap the financial rewards of those who ran the railroad and those who ran the park. And so some of the things we're able to do is we're able to get young people from the Blackfeet Nation in the Glacier Park, and what we're looking to do is get our students on an educational path to be leaders in the park. And so over the last 4 years, we've done a high altitude grant where we've identified sacred sites within the park boundaries and been able to take steps to keep tourists away from those sites. I'm going to show a film about that also introduces some of the work of the railroad. And also we have a great art display. Some of those calendar pieces are going to be in Browning, Montana next week. So if anybody's interested in that, we'd love for you to come out and check it out. Also, Miss Cecilia Wells is doing similar work in Yellowstone, where I believe the relationship with Yellowstone and the tribes around it are just coming into fruition. They're certainly, the Blackfeet have a special relationship with the park administrator and with the people there. So I'm going to start out with a song, I think, and then I'm going to show part of a film. And I'm also going to figure out how to work this PowerPoint. So, all right, let's do that. Let's see if we can get the guitar and the mic working over here. Check mic. Just a Blackfoot dreamer took his tongue, his name. Blue coats did come singing run, engine, run, to the Thunderbird's bridges great one. In peace I will follow, nevermore will I fight. Be no more running, 'cause love is one thing that wisdom has left us behind. God in the heavens told all those that remain, let go of your pride, live a good honest life, you'll see those that loved you again. 'Cause it can't kill your spirit, no, 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 it'll sure take your life. Ran, you killed off your daughters and wives. The train rolled on. You know, 'cause the road off laughing from the courthouse down on Appomattox. As soon as Lee signed it away, and I heard a baby crying. Somebody says got to die. Yes, indeed. Yellow hair must pay. Tell me who is savage, who is free, who died down at Wounded Knee. What's the matter here today? And I heard a baby crying. Somebody says got to die. Yes, yellow hair did pay. Circle they dance, the cavalry's here, their anger and fear. Now we've less than a ghost of a chance. So with that, I'm gonna cue up a film with a lot of our elders that really, it's their story to tell. So, all right, hold that. See if we can make this happen. Natty's having a good time, and you want to put that in the slot. We're just going to take our time here. Is there one right there? Well, I'm blind. All right, let's slowly turn this on and see how loud it's going to be. You ready back there on the mixing board? Sure. Let me see if that's if we need to turn the volume up here. All right. Our volume should be up. Is there Try this again.
That's what makes them blues. Like you're just talking about Big Boss Man. Big Boss Man, why can't you hear me? Big Boss Man, why can't you hear me? Well, you went so big, you just talk, that's all. Well, George Burke went out from back east, and James Willard Schultz was a writer. They were pretty instrumental in having the Indians sell the park to the government. But the Indian at that time couldn't read or write. So the interpreters didn't do a very good job of interpreting what the Indians wanted. And so they always thought it was a lease, that they were going to lease the park. And then after 99 years, it would be given back to the Indian people. That's what their understanding of it was. And so, from what I understand, it's still pending. You know, it never was ever ratified by the government, so it's still pending. And that was my that was the Indians' understanding of it at that time.
What is the relationship between the tribe and the Great Northern Railroad?
The tribe didn't like it because they were never really contacted about the easements and right-of-ways. And a lot of the chiefs back then were never understood why the railroad came through. It was good simply because it brought a lot of some of the economy out here. And it was bad because a lot of the Indian people that came to promote were being paid, which wasn't very much, but they still had family who was starving back on the reservation. So that's a good and bad part about it.
An adventurous American naturalist called it the crown of the continent. To the primitive Indians, this awesome country was the home of the gods. You will call it wonderful.
The thing about the railroad, when it came through, the buffalo were pretty much all gone by then. Indian people were starving, so they really didn't have much to say. I mean, the government could have put them to work building the railroad, but they didn't. When the smallpox epidemic hit, devastated the tribe. Well, the first one hit in 1835, but it wasn't very bad. The last one was 1880. That's when it was really bad. That's when it devastated all the tribes. That pretty much, that's when the war chiefs started fighting. Back east, at that time, they thought all the Indian people were dead. And so they started coming out and digging up graves, looking for Indian bones. Then the Indian found out about it, and that's where AIM started up. That's where this American Indian movement started up in the 70s, 68. They found out they were digging up these bones, so they went to the government and said, hey, how would you like us to go and dig up some of your bones?
Sometimes you're lost in this world and you don't know what to do. You don't even know who you are. And you find out your identity, you find out who you are, where you come from, where you're connected to, and the places you go. That makes you feel like the best person you could be.
And so that's where they had this Repatriation Act passed, where we're getting all these bones back to put back in graves again. And so this woman that was a telephone operator, she was able to let people know that the Blackfeet were still alive and thriving here on the reservation.
if I had a dollar bill, yes, I believe I surely will go to town and drink my fill early in the morning.
The road that I was on wasn't the right one, and I think that I had to experience all this stuff that went along with that road to really open my eyes up for this new path that I was taking. And I had to find out who I was as a person before I could hop on that other path and start finding out who I was. Then after I did that, all these dreams, all these wishes that I ever wished for, they came true magically. And I think that once you start to find out who you are as a person and connect the dots with your culture and your identity, you become Pekani, a person.
My grandparents live up by Kiowa. That's where I grew up out there. It's probably about 3 or 4 miles from the park boundary. We'd ride horses all through that area, checking our cows and stuff. And sometimes we'd get on the bridges and ride into the park, horseback, and here come a ranger telling us we can't be in there. Well, that's where the argument started there, because I'd go tell my grandpa we got kicked out of there. And he'd get mad, and he'd say they don't own that park. We own the park. They own the rocks. Because all they wanted was the rocks. We got the timber, we got the water, we got the plants, and we got the animals. He said that agreement was only for the rocks, the top of the mountains, not nothing else. So that's where I always thought that the park, we stood with the park there. I've also talked to some of our elders when I was a game warden about the park there, and with other game wardens that was before me about the park. And he told me, Junior Rail told me that you keep them rangers off our land. You keep them out of there. They got no jurisdiction here. They can travel the roads, the paved roads, but they cannot get onto gravel roads and patrol down here. He told me that the Blackfeet tribe has only one game warden on the North Country, and I'm it. He also said there's 30 rangers on that side of the line that got nothing to do up there but stumble over each other. And they just want to come down on the reservation and start bringing their park law, their state law down here. And he told me that you keep them out of here. So Councilman Al Potts told me we're still at war with the government. We're still at war with the U.S., with the state of Montana, and we're still at war with Glacier County. We signed a treaty, but we was never defeated in battle, and we was never moved from our land like other tribes were moved to different places here. This is our land. This is where we were created, and Glacier Park is part of our creation.
Sites could be considered like our prehistoric sites, the ones that are older, like our teepee rings and that type of thing. And I think then we have a sacred site that's historical, like Like, we were the first ones that took our bundle out to Badger to Medicine and sweat our bundle. And that was probably the first time there was a bundle sweat out there, and I don't know how long. But by doing that, it documented it as a sacred site, right? Because we utilized it for a ceremony.
National Park Service put out a bulletin. It's called Bulletin 38. And it tells you how to identify traditional cultural properties. And there are 4 criteria.
Even where we're sitting, wherever you can say a prayer that is sacred. And we know we travel through the mountains to raid on the other side, the other tribes there. So we prayed before we left. We prayed every time, every place we went. But the whole area, it's not one rock, it's not one tree, it's everything. Everything in there, you pray. And everything is sacred.
So there's an area, there's something that's associated with an era or a person. You know, if it's a historic structure.
The lakes in Glacier National Park are sacred lakes simply because medicine lodges were put up around that area. So they're considered sacred. So the mountain, Chief Mountain, is in the park, so it's considered sacred. That's where Vision Quest, where Native American people, several of them went there to seek a vision, to get the powers, higher powers.
The criterion D is actual stuff on the ground. It could be a rock cairn, drive lines, effigy, something like this.
If I was to see a tourist right now and he asked me, what is a sacred site? I would say a sacred site could be an object or a place, and it's either those two entities that are connected to the human body and the spirit and form like as one, and has a deep connection with the land and the spirit.
Why do we think of Chief Mountain as being sacred? Well, because it's the chief. Why is it the chief? When we had the first Rocky Mountains, the plates come together and it forms the first Rocky Mountains. That first set of Rocky Mountains has already eroded away, except for one, and that's Chief Mountain. It's the only mountain left of the original Rocky Mountains. The mountains that we see today are the second plate. Plates come together and form the Rocky Mountains again, and that's what we see today. But Chief Mountain is from the original ones. Now, we had to have been here, known that, and that's why we call it Chief.
I guess I was wondering, would you guys want to start, with the questions now, and then I can finish the presentation so we have plenty of time? I think you guys talking about the ghost dance, obviously with our students, that reconnection to the land and the language is a big important thing. And then also, the relationship between, that wasn't very good with the railroad and the park in the past has gotten a lot better over time. And I almost feel like it would be just as important to spend time on talking about the things that have gotten better, and maybe if there's other entities that are looking for a path to try to work with maybe it's a park, or maybe it's a railroad or something like that that we can engage in that conversation. So let's open it up to questions, and then I also want Cecilia to share with you guys about the things that are happening in Yellowstone. They're just getting to where the tribes are getting some recognition that have been part of Yellowstone Park forever, and they're going to have some interesting events this summer. So I guess with that said, does anybody have any questions so far?
So it's Drew Landry, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. And this is such an incredible project with your students. I love oral history as well. Could you talk a little more about actually the process of working with students and oral history and the community, the elders? Like, what are some really important insights that you have in that's a lot of moving parts. That's a lot of bringing people together while you're trying to teach or work with Blackfeet Community College, right? And
yes, ma'am.
Oral history and all the dynamics with that with community and elders. So insights on that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't know that we've been successful with everything we've ever done. Frankly, we haven't. We have lots of things we could do better, but I think one thing we do is when we hire interns, we make them write what they're interested in, and we try to connect them with things that they're already interested in. Like this gentleman, Joe Wagner, his father was named Curly Bear Wagner, and he'd done a lot of great things, including bringing elders back from Smithsonian, and and Joe always wanted to do those things that his father had done, and that's showing people this land and people that are going to respect it. And I think the other thing we learned is you got to work with whoever's there, right? And that mutual respect to where by the end, there's a employee of Glacier National Park and Joe of this film, and you can see that mutual respect because the park employee never went to Chief Mountain. He didn't do that until he went with Joe, and he never felt comfortable with going to that sacred site until he felt like the right opportunity with the right person, right? So I think the other thing is, you got to help. You also got to make the people you're working with. There's got to be that input, and you got to back them up. So sometimes you got to make them think the whole thing's their idea, which is great. I know this high altitude grant, with this film specifically about. That's 4 years of hiking, finally figuring out that we have to have students that have the endurance to go up, sometimes hike 15 miles a day, things like that. And so I don't know if that answered your question, but I also plan to talk a little more about the Great Northern Railroad, or Railway as well. So is there any other questions? All right. Well, I'll continue to pontificate then. So See America First was the call to wealthy Americans who spent weeks in Glacier National Park instead of Europe. Being that Great Northern Railway was the exclusive concessionaire of Glacier National Park, and it was also the means by which people traveled to the crown of the continent, Great Northern was selling America that fleeting vision of the West. And that vision could only be, I guess, really showcased by, say it how you want, by using the Blackfeet and the Blackfoot Confederacy to show the end of the buffalo days. And so as much as the tribe was a big part of it when it came to publicity, there was really not much financial gain there. Noted conservationist George Burr Grinnell, he negotiated the sale of the ceded strip, which is the land on the east side of Glacier Park. The tribe wanted $3 million. He knocked that down to $1.5 million. A lot of tribal members still believe that's a lease. And of course, because English was not the native tongue of the Blackfeet, something real similar happened. So I guess we know that there was a destruction of the buffalo, and the tribe was dependent on this money to stay alive, basically. So you see these beautiful pictures in Great Northern calendars, and you also have to realize there were people starving on the reservation at the same time. So I'm going to go through the slides, which have everything neatly crafted. And would you guys like to see more of this film, or so I'll get back to the film in a few minutes, and then I'll get to the slides right now. And thank y'all for being so attentive. So And the other thing is, I didn't realize when we booked this thing, this is graduation day from Blackfeet Community College, so our student couldn't be here today. Don't blame them. All right, so let's go next. So I'm a Acadian of descent, and in 1755, the removal of the Acadians from Nova Scotia was the earliest case of possibly state-sponsored ethnic cleansing. We see the same thing happening today in Ukraine. This was colonialism and genocide, and it continued until the buffalo were nearly extinct. And as you know, Army officers were told, kill every buffalo you can, because every buffalo dead is an Indian gone. Also, Sheridan once said, these men have done more, and he talked about the folks killing a buffalo, and will do more to settle the vexed Indian question than the entire regular Army has done in the last 30 years. So that's what the tribes were up against, and we know this. And so it comes back to trauma many times. Historical trauma, PTSD, there's domestic abuse, failed relationships, addiction. And this is something we deal with our students and with our community, and we've taken some steps. But how do you continue to learn from the mistakes of the past as you see all these buffalo skulls being, hopefully a lesson? There's a quote from Billy Mills. You have to look deeper, way below the anger, the hurt, the hate, the jealousy, the self-pity, way down deeper where dreams lie, son. Find your dream. It's the pursuit of that dream that heals you. I think he's correct. So I visited Glacier Park 25, 30 years ago. I knew that I'd come back, and I did. And it's a place I healed up after a pretty terrible car accident. And Chief Crowfoot said, what is life? It's the flash of the firefly in the night. It's the breath of the buffalo in wintertime. It's a little shadow that runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. And this is, I guess this was my flash right here. I hit an 18-wheeler head on and wound up in Glacier County. So sometimes when you live in a place where the bravest thing you can do is to fight your addiction, there's some quotes on success that I usually bring out. And I think the main one here is there's two types of people who will tell you that you can't make a difference in this world. Those who are afraid to try, and those who are afraid that you'll succeed. I believe that. So James J. Hill is the gentleman that had the Great Northern Railroad. His son, Lewis Hill, was also an artist, and he worked with Lionel Reese, and Mr. Reese is a German-born American artist who did all these beautiful paintings of the Blackfoot. So there's Blackfoot Confederacy, and then we're the Blackfeet tribe. And so these iconic pictures were what sold people on coming out to Glacier National Park. And my mom has one of these pictures on her refrigerator in South Louisiana. And I think once you hear the stories of folks like Mr. Ernie Heavy Runner and that were part of this era, you realize that that's still there. That culture is still there. And long past the life of the Great Northern Railway, the Blackfeet culture is still very strong. And so, he was adopted into the tribe, and he also did some great work in Harlem. And he was, I guess they say his detail of racial characteristics and cultural customs really helped define this romantic vision of the West. I know one thing he did do is he also often had people dress in regalia, and he tried to make these pictures as colorful as possible. So it goes back to what we've done at the college, is create programs for the community that put our youth on an educational path to becoming leaders in Glacier National Park. Our students learn Blackfeet environmental stewardship. They work on projects like our trail system. They participate in hikes, hunts, harvests of native plants. And we also work with Glacier National Park's nursery, and they're a big partner for us. They're going to be building us a greenhouse next year, and they helped us with our trail that connects our land grant projects to the college campus. So I can go on about all these other things, but I want to introduce Cecilia Wells. She's working with a group of Native Americans on a project that's going to reconnect a lot of the tribes around Yellowstone National Park that I guess that voice hasn't really been out there in the way it should be. And I'll let her tell you what they're going to be doing later this summer, and then we'll wrap this up. So hold on one second.
It's fine, I think. Yeah. Okay. Are you able to hear me okay? Hello, my name is Cecilia Wells. So this last summer in June, I was invited through Mountain Time Arts to be a part of Yellowstone's 150th anniversary, which is coming up in August of this year. And there was a group of us, mainly Montana tribes. Shane Doyle from the Crow tribe invited me, and it was also through MSU in Bozeman, Montana. And we met up. The idea was to basically, Yellowstone wants to introduce or bring back Native Americans into the Yellowstone Park. And so while we were sitting and discussing at one of our first meetings, a lady named Ren Freeman, who's Eastern Shoshone, mentioned that where have we gone? We've always been here. So that discussion, well, those discussions were about, you know, the 150th anniversary and the activities that were gonna happen. And it then became Yellowstone Revealed. And then, of course, more people came on, and the whole purpose is Yellowstone would like to show, you know, the footprints of Native people that have interacted with Yellowstone in the past. And we've come across, I believe, 27, 28 tribes that have utilized Yellowstone. And a lot of the conversations were about, you know, the teepee rings and how those are sacred objects because they're left there, and that it's been known that other tribes have utilized those teepee rings. And so that shows, you know, a very sophisticated culture between other tribes, because it wasn't just one tribe. But I mean, we met 3 times throughout this past year, and we came up with ideas. And so one of the, this is all gonna pretty much take place on the north entrance of Yellowstone. And the Shane Doyle, he will be doing either 27 or 28 teepee. So he'll be doing a teepee encampment, and there will be 27, 28 lodges. And each of those will represent each tribe that had, you know, utilized Yellowstone in the past. And another team leader, Patty Baldez, she is from the Arapaho Eastern Shoshone tribes down in Wyoming. She will do dancing buffaloes. So she plans on bringing in 150 people from her tribe. The majority will be children, and they will be making buffaloes out of willows and then paper macheing them. And these will just be throughout kind of the park, but mainly the north entrance. And then they will also have Native artists in, let's see. So it's supposed to be August 25th and August 26th. And then, but just while talking about it, and when I first walked in, one of the gentlemen during the Q&As mentioned about, you know, we have always been here. And that's pretty much the conversations that go on when, you know, Native people are discussing things. And I mean, we do finally have our voice you know, and a place at this table now. But so I just want to kind of end it with a quote, and let me just ask a quick question. Is Rick Santorum here? No? Okay. So he said, we birthed a nation from nothing. I mean, there was nothing here. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, there isn't much Native American culture in American culture. And so just going back to what the previous guy said on the last Q&A, you know, we've always been here. And like Ren Freeman said with the Yellowstone, you know, where have we gone? So I'd just like to wrap it up with that.
Play our song out, and then we can play the rest of that video during the break, if that makes sense. If not, it's all right. Thank y'all very much for listening to us today. My grandfather worked on the railroad, and this is for him. Grandpa was an engineer at South Pacific Line. He went Orleans to Frisco, half his life on railroad time. He heard that lonesome whistle to see that open range. He never was a cowboy, but to me, that man was bigger than John Wayne. The sun set on his freedom, that steam engine's gone, long gone. Said he'd give half his money now just to hear one roll on. He told me, I'd like to see it before it's gone. Well, the government owns us all. But back when I was young, I could go out there and run. I'd like to see it before it's gone. Before he was a soldier and his wife to be, said they left from Virginia and rode a tank through Italy. The ladies there so beautiful, the grass was pure and green, till the snowfall hit the mountainsides and the martyrs hit the streets. Mama talks about that old man like he never done no wrong. I can see him mending fences, yeah, working back out on the farm. I'd like to see that before he's gone. Well, the company men own us all. And back when I was young, I could go out there and hunt. Like to see it before he's gone. Cane pole, the birds would fill the skies till they knocked down all the timber just to build them fences high. Bonnie blew to San Francisco, seen the desert moon at night. And the last time I went down there, Lord, never thought he'd die. His hands was old and calloused, still that fire was in his eyes. Tell you, when I was a young man, yeah, he was so damn full of life. I'd like to see him before he's gone. Well, there's no place to call your own. A blacktop on the road, getting everything you'd go. You were smiling in the sun. Say there's just a stretch of land they could not take away. last time I was out there, I seen there was somebody baling hay. I'd like to see that before it's gone, before they split up this family farm. And that lonesome whistle blows, may your childhood memories hold what you believed back when you was young. Thank y'all very much. Have a wonderful.
Thank you, Drew and Cecilia, for your presentation. Let's give them one more round of applause. And so next, we would like to move into a Q&A session. So we'll just kind of see if there's anyone who has any questions for Drew or Cecilia.
Okay, we do have one from our virtual audience that says, when did the railroad come through Montana, and what was the and do we know anything about the response of the Blackfeet at the time?
So, well, first of all, the agreement of 1895 was in 1895, and that's when it was sold. And then the park was established in 1910. I think the railroad came through in 1915. And the response was, I mean, well, what can you really say? You know, you don't have any control over it. So what could be the response? There was jobs for people that were helping the PR campaign, or at least participation and inclusion for those folks. But, you know, Blackfeet couldn't swim in the pool at the East Glacier Lodge, and that's just how it was, you know. And there's a story of a family that was spending a lot of money at the lodge, and their kids were playing with some Blackfeet youth. And the mother said, you know what, we're not going to stay here any longer if my son's friends can't swim with him. Well, they let those young men swim in the pool that week, but after that, who knows? So I don't know that there was an official response, because I don't think that at that time the tribe had a voice in its own future, because they had already sold that land to make Glacier Park. Now, things have changed recently, and we're very happy with that. So.
Thank you. We do have another question here from the audience.
Hi, that's actually my question. You have mentioned a couple times things are better. What's better? How to become better? Tell us more about that. Thank you.
I'm not saying everything's great, but I'm saying that that there is the opportunity for our students, like the gentleman in that video. Right now, he's working for Glacier National Park. And he continues to do this work to identify sacred sites. He's also a member of a society that protects the reservation. And so I guess from the top down, they treat the Blackfeet Nation with respect, and it's a nation-to-nation relationship. So, you know, they bless the park. They say prayers with our elders, and I guess it's a little bit different because the eastern side, or the ceded strip, is actually Blackfeet land, and the tribe has the right to. They're not hunting there, but they still can gather. They don't have to pay to get in the park. And why don't you? How do you think it's getting better, Sue?
Well, I mean, one reason why, you know, like Glacier National Park, we speak so much of it is because, like, the railroad directly goes right through there. And so a lot of the visitors, you know, they take the train to there. And the lodges are literally like 10 miles out of Browning, and it is on tribal land. So that's one reason, I mean, why we discuss that is because it's very related. And it does have a huge effect, because that's the reason why the railroad did come through, you know, was for the lodge. I mean, I guess one way, and like Drew said, like with Joe Wagner, you know, he is, I mean, there is more Native American rangers coming about, and
So it's about that educational path to where, you know, we're working with other land-grant colleges to where we're trying to put our kids that have an interest in being leaders in a park on a path to where they could, hopefully one day they'll be a Blackfeet park administrator, you know?
I mean, but as far as like the actual railroad itself, I mean, I don't really see, you know, what that has benefited to the tribe, I guess. While going to school at MSU, one of my classmates did a project on the railroad system and just all the goods, you know, that travel through. And he said, just along Highline too, you know, all those people live there and also on the reservation, and they never ever get to see, you know, any of that. And I remember, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, they were trying to put a bypass road that just completely didn't even have to go through Blackfeet Reservation, you know, and that's kind of like the same way with the railroad system. It just comes through every day. But yeah.
And so with that PR campaign, I mean, it was evident that the Great Northern used the history of the Blackfeet to get tourists out there, right? And because the Great Northern's been shut down for so long, I mean, they don't even exist. So I don't have to say that relationship between the park is kind of, that has gotten better. I don't see much a difference between the relationship with the park and Great Northern. I think that's kind of the same thing, because there's still 27 million tourists that come through Glacier National Park, and that looks to me like jobs for our students and our community in the summertime. So I think that's how it helps. When the tourists come through, tribal members can be entrepreneurs and make money off of those tourists, off of those funds. So.
We have another question.
How big is your reservation, and how many Blackfeet are left, and what's being done about preserving the language?
Well, you know, I think about tribal colleges and kind of the idea that started in Alcatraz about Indian education for all, and I think the tribal colleges are the keepers of the language now. So we're one place, but if our kids don't start a lot earlier than that, they're not gonna know the language like they should. And certainly, I don't know. Do you want to answer that one?
They tend to do a lot of. They do have, let's see, like on audiobooks, I believe, for the Blackfeet language. The
immersion school?
Yes, they do have an immersion school on the Blackfeet Reservation. They do teach it somewhat in the public school as, you know, elementary. It's not completely fluent, of course, but they do teach it, and then also at the community college. As far as the Blackfeet Reservation, like Drew said earlier with the Blackfeet Confederacy, we are just one group of 4. There's also 3 others up into Canada. And of course, before you know, Montana became Montana, Blackfeet Reservation went all the way down into the Yellowstone National Park. But now it's I don't know if, I mean, it's some of Glacier National Park, which is East Glacier, and then Cupbank, Montana, and
yeah,
I mean,
so I think we have about 17,000 members, and I also believe, I don't know how many millions of acres, but it's a very large
it's one of the
land base.
Yes, larger
probably one of
tribes
the
in Montana.
10 biggest tribes in the country, if that answers your question.
But not only is there 17,000 members, there's also members that, you know, have been relocated to other states during the Relocation Act, and so there's a lot of Blackfeet tribal members.
We have another question back here.
So Amtrak currently runs through bringing the tourists, and BNSF operates the rail line. Do those two entities provide any opportunities and jobs for the Native American peoples up there?
I know that one good opportunity, like two of the gentlemen in that video, there's a Native America Speaks program in the park, and they pay pretty good money for folks to go and tell genuine cultural stories. I know they have some of those ambassadors on the train. I'm not sure how many since COVID. And I know that Amtrak continues to be known as the Empire Builder, which was, I think the Orient Express and the Empire Builder were the two trains that Great Northern operated until the 70s, something like that.
It brings some opportunity, not a lot. I mean, like, the lodge is supposed to be opening at the end of this month during Memorial Weekend. And this year, because they're fully opening, there will be at least 230 workers, and the majority of those workers will probably be brought in from, out of the country, other states. There's a lot of seasonal workers just in East Glacier Park. That's not including the lodge. And so the Blackfeet tribe does tend to get overlooked on that part.
But I'd have to say the one thing that I don't know in the history of the relationship between the Blackfeet and Glacier National Park and the railroad has shown that money wasn't top priority is that when COVID started that first year, the park shut down because of the tribe's COVID protocols, and I guess we were both pretty surprised with that, and that's a win. It saved some lives for 6 months.
Yes.
All right, we've got just one more question from the audience and then one question virtually.
Sure.
Listening to you about Yellowstone, the thought of the Polynesian Cultural Center came to mind, but the indigenous people of the South Pacific having a center with everything represented. Is that something that's feasible for our national parks like Yellowstone? You said there was like 20 some odd different tribes that you'd identified, or something like that.
So you said there was 27 tribes that would participate?
28, I don't know. You said there was a whole lot of tribes that were associated with the Yellowstone area.
Yes.
Is that something that, like the Polynesian Cultural Center for the people of the South Pacific, is that something that's possible to develop in say, Yellowstone?
I would believe so, and that's the thing is that, just like Glacier National Park, I mean, and in the history books, like they were speaking on earlier, I mean, Native Americans are slowly just coming, like, they actually discussed that on our last visit, and so one of the questions was, because a lot of the merchandise that is there is from China, and so a Crow lady asked, are we going to be able to represent our Native artwork, and because there's a lot of Native people that, have their own art, beadwork and all that. And so there's one of the buildings at Old Faithful, I believe. I cannot remember the name of the building at the moment, but literally a week after that meeting, one of the Yellowstone Rangers ladies, she opened up a position for a Montana Native person to come in and curate the artists that will be going through that building. So they're slowly starting. There still is more tribes that have utilized Yellowstone, but the 27 to 28 is the ones that they, came across so far. So I'm sure, like, in the future, there will be, natives from all over that will be in the park and have their work in those areas.
Thank you. So our online question is actually a question to the group at large. So one of our virtual attendees, they said that it was brought up how romanticized images of the Blackfeet were a contrast to realities on the reservation. And today, it's still the same, where we see romantic praise of Native American culture, but not the same energy put into addressing modern challenges for the people. Are there respectful ways non-natives can make an impact as allies for tribes in their areas? Is there anyone in the general room that wants to answer that? I'll bring you the mic. Or the folks on stage.
I guess my response to that really is just to take advantage of opportunities like this event today, where you can learn and listen about the history from the people. And, there are powwows that take place around the country. Oftentimes, powwows are a public gathering. And so it's another opportunity to experience the culture and to, learn from through those experiences as well. A lot of academics or a lot of colleges and universities also have, social events or powwows of sorts where, those are opportunities for learning. So really just, engage with the community, do some research and look, okay, here in Salt Lake City, we have 8 tribes here in Utah. What do I know about the tribes, and start from there. So really it's just, taking time and to learn and to educate yourselves, and really speak with the wisdom holders and the people themselves as that way to learn how to be a better advocate, or not an advocate, but an ally. That's the word I'm looking for. To be a better ally, so that you're able to share what you're learning with your friends and family, and hopefully relations and education will improve as time goes on.
And I want to add one quick thing. We have some great vendors out here. When people are interested in Native American culture, I am a supporter of the American Indian Arts Act, and please make sure that when you buy beadwork or jewelry, it's made by Native artists, because so much of our art has been stolen and is being reproduced in places like Taiwan. So make sure those that you support are actually Native, from Native communities, and include us. Please include our people. And perhaps most important, I was just told that our lunch is getting cold, so let's adjourn for lunch.
Great, thank you everyone. And one more time, let's give a round of applause to our panelists.